as we climb up the social and the economic ladder, our brains find other things to want and make us unhappy when we realize that they're there and we don't have them. So 115 today, depending upon where you live, you could live like a king and you could be the richest person in the area, or you could be the poorest person. And unless you are highly, highly aware of that and remind yourself that that shouldn't be determining your happiness, you're going to let that determine where you fall on that level of reasonable happiness.
So welcome to Open Book. I am your host, Anthony Scaramucci. I am very proud to have on with me a comedian, author, podcaster, Paul Ollinger. He's written a phenomenal book, actually. He's got to figure out a way to raise the profile of this book. I think this book is interesting. It's comedy, it's philosophy, it's almost a how-to on life in here, Paul. I don't know. I love the book. Reasonably Happy by Paul Ollinger. And the point being, you're living on Earth, so some things are going to go badly for you. You have to learn how to deal with it, but you're reasonably happy. Am I right? Are you reasonably happy?
I'm very reasonably happy, but you know, one of the main contributors to reasonable happiness is appropriate expectations. And if you think that everything's going to go great every single day in every facet of your life, you're going to be a highly dissatisfied human being.
Right. No question. But some of us have that problem. I don't, by the way. I started out getting my ass kicked. I've continued to get my ass kicked. My expectations
in
for life
far better circumstances, Anthony, though.
Yes, but my relationship with life is one where I have expected the worst. I have zero expectations. So anything that happens to me, I'm grateful for. I'm also, Paul, unlike you, you're a tall son of a bitch. I am too short. So I am too short to see the glass anything other than half full. When I'm looking up at the glass, it looks full to me. But, of course, you know, we met at a comedy club late last year, which was a lot of fun, wasn't it? I thought that was fun.
It was a lot of fun. I didn't have my best set ever, but, you know, that's the way it goes. Some days are great. Some crowds are into it. You know, it wasn't a bomb. It just wasn't great, you know. All
right. Well, I mean, look, who the hell is – I mean, tell me. Listen, I had an 11-day experience in the White House. Wasn't my best set ever, okay? I mean, you have to just deal with it, right?
That's right.
But I thought you were great. I didn't think you were – you know, I have to confess I left halfway through your set because I was on a time schedule, and I told these guys that I had another meeting that I told Seth I had to leave. I will say this, and if Seth was here listening, of course, this is a mutual friend of ours.
Yep.
Who's also a comedian. If you're starting out with a rendition about the death of your mom and you're showing slides of your wonderful, warm, beautiful, but very deceased mom.
Yep.
And then you're like, okay, let's shut off that emotion. And now we're going to go to stand-up comedy.
That's right.
You know, so Paul Ollinger, you may have had a bad set, but you may have been in a bad environment for a set.
Well, I did an Alzheimer's benefit one time, and to start off the show, they had the people from the Alzheimer's Foundation, and it was like Alzheimer's, you know, is an incurable disease that robs, you know, millions of families of their loved ones. There's no cure. It's going to take tens of millions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. And now comedy, you know, and it's one of those things where you go, okay, well, let's step up. Let's recognize the energy in the room and do your best. But, you know, every comic that's been doing it for more than a little while has the stories of the setup that just doesn't put you in a position to win necessarily, but that's what you got to deal with, you know?
Yes, I agree with you. But, Paul, who can't love this title? Reasonably Happy. And so tell us where that came from. Where did you get this great personality from? And how do you define reasonably happy?
Well, where my personality comes from is probably I grew up one of 6 kids in a big, loud Catholic family. We had everything we needed, but, you know, it wasn't the most luxurious of upbringings. It was relatively Spartan. And I think that I had all the love I needed, but I always wanted more. And the crazy thing is that all that ambition that was lit in me at a very young age is also, the flip side of that is also the thing that keeps us unsatisfied in life. And so the people, and the more hungry you are over time, when you go to high school, you go to college, you go to graduate school, you get put in environments with other ambitious people. And then your standards just keep going up and up and up. When you got to Goldman Sachs, you probably saw levels of wealth you never even imagined growing up, but then all of a sudden that becomes normal. And so you become dissatisfied. Well, that's just the way our brains have evolved. And so when I write about Reasonably Happy, when I do produce my podcast called Reasonably Happy, it's almost therapy for me, a reminder to say, hey, you're okay. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't expect too much, and be very, very grateful for all the great stuff that you have.
Hard for some people to do, Paul.
Hard for everybody to do.
Yeah. Why so hard?
Because that's the way our brains evolved. The good news is that our ancestors were the survivors. They're the ones that avoided the saber-toothed tigers and staved off the tribes next door to sustain life and pass on their genes. The bad news is they were the most paranoid, unhappy sons of bitches that ever lived in the history of humanity.
Right, and because they needed to be that way to survive, right?
That's right. And so we've evolved this tendency called negative filtering, where everything we perceive a lot of things in our environment as threats because our brains are designed to keep us alive, not to make us happy.
This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. I've spent over half my life on Wall Street, so I know how important it is to talk in numbers. Let's face it, traditional therapy can add up fast. It can feel like a big investment, but it's also one of the most important ones you'll ever make. For me, therapy has been a game changer. Having someone to talk to, work through challenges with, and gain perspective from, it's invaluable. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, helping you save on both cost and time. Two things we all wish we had more of. Like most of us, I live a busy lifestyle, but with BetterHelp, you can join a session with just a click anytime, anywhere. No commute, no waiting room, just professional support when you need it. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/openbook today to get 10% off your first month. Okay, but we're now in a society of reasonable influence. We're now in a society of reasonable affluence. There's a lot of different things that can make us happy. I'm going to ask you a question because it's directly related to your book. If you had $115,000 a year in 1925, you were one of the richest people on the planet. It was an exceptional amount of money. That would put you into the multimillionaire status. And I could tell you right now, you got $115,000 a year, 1925, or 100 years later, I'm going to give you $115,000 a year. And remember now, you're going to live in 1925, though. So you're going to live with the tech, the medicine. You're going to live with the technology, the access to information,
no
the
air
lack of
conditioning.
internet, no air conditioning, streaming. You'll get ice blocks delivered to the house. And you'll have rudimentary phone system, rudimentary electrical wiring in the house, lots of fuse boxes everywhere. The smell of diesel, if you have a garage, you're going to have one of those wind-up cars. Okay, so and you have the wherewithal, knowledge, medical community of 1925 at your disposal with your very lucrative 115. Or you could live with $115,000 today in 2025. And I think you know the point I'm getting from your book. So what is the answer?
Well, we're the most fortunate, wealthiest people that have ever lived in history. People who make $115,000 today live better than kings did 200 years ago. I think that's the point you're trying to make.
Yeah, I'm making the point that there is a social good that's worth all of that lack of money that you're having in 2025, that we're all richer. There's no Caesar from the ancient period of Rome that has flown in the back of the plane from New York to Miami. There's no Caesar that's done that. And
if he did, he'd be complaining about it, right? So you raise a point. The point is partially that we're very, very wealthy today, wealth of technology, a wealth of ease of use, a wealth of lack of disease, a wealth of longevity. But the other point to bring up is that happiness, especially when it comes to finances, is generally determined not in the absolute, but in the relative. And so we don't consider ourselves rich unless we have as much and maybe a little bit more than those around us. And so that's one of the things that you learn, as I mentioned before, like as you grow up middle class. You worked at Goldman Sachs. I grew up pretty middle class. I ended up working at Facebook. There are things that I never thought about flying private in my life until I worked at Facebook. And you're like, oh, that's what some of these people around me are doing. Oh, that's a thing. That's a thing maybe I should want. And your brain isn't even, you can't want something you're not aware of. And so as we climb up the social and the economic ladder, our brains find other things to want and make us unhappy when we realize that they're there and we don't have them. So 115 today, depending upon where you live, you could live like a king and you could be the richest person in the area, or you could be the poorest person. And unless you are highly, highly aware of that and remind yourself that that shouldn't be determining your happiness, you're going to let that determine where you fall on that level of reasonable happiness.
So, follow-up question, because it's related to your answer. Envy. Does envy make us unhappy? Because,
oh my God, absolutely.
The Bible has a great line, and I'm not a evangelical person or anything like that, but I've read the Bible, of course, and I'm a practicing Catholic. You grew up Catholic. Seriously, people, funny, they say they grow up Catholic. Let me tell you something. Once you're a Catholic, Paul Ollinger, you're always a Catholic. You can pretend otherwise.
It's baked in.
You can go Hindu. You can go all this shit. You're Catholic. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck in that web of that guilt cycle, and you're stuck with Jesus. You're just stuck with him, Paul. It's just the way it works, okay? But the point that I'm making is there's a line in the Bible, happy is the man who's happy with his own lot. He's sitting there with his own lot in life, satisfied. He's not peering over the gate. He's not peering over the hedge, looking at greener grass. Is that true, Paul, or what am I missing?
Well, I think it's absolutely true. Teddy Roosevelt said comparison is the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. And it's quoted so often because it's worth our contemplation,
well said.
That, in the commandments, do not covet. Do not covet is not just hey, you're going to commit a sin if you go and take your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's belongings. It's also a recipe for happiness for yourself. Let it go, man. Don't covet. Coveting is no way to live your life. Being grateful for what you have is the path to happiness.
Well said. Okay, so you are an interesting guy because you go to Facebook. You're there at the right time. You're a brilliant guy. You're executing on behalf of Facebook. And as you write in the book, you've made yourself financially independent. More than one time over from Facebook. God bless you. You made tons of money there. But then you make this dramatic decision to step away from corporate America, which is a brave thing to do. What are the lessons there? What was it? How did that decision go down? What were you thinking about? What were you thinking about as a kid? What were you thinking about at Facebook? And I see you as somebody that's returned to your inner kid. So tell me the thought process. Tell me the hero's journey of Paul Ollinger.
The truth of the matter is that I started doing comedy when I was in business school. I told jokes at a talent show. I went to business school because I wanted to make more money, and I ended up deciding that I wanted to be a stand-up comedian while at business school. But I had borrowed $80,000 in 1997 dollars, which would be what, 150, 160 today, something like that. So despite this dream that was born in me at that time, I had this obligation to pay back my loans. I was like, I got to get serious about adding value to the corporate world. I got into the digital media business, met some great people. I had a good run. And I'd always said, okay, if I have money in the bank and I'm still single, I'm going to go do stand-up comedy, which I did do for 2 years from 2005 to 2007 out in LA. Then I got engaged to my wife and was like, I need a real job. Right about that time, some friends of mine I had worked with at Yahoo called and said, come join us at this little startup called Facebook. And I was like, what the hell? Someday this company could be as big as MySpace. That's about how big my thinking was back then. And so I jumped on this roller coaster, this rocket ship. I had no idea it would be a $1.5 trillion market cap company some 17 years later. I surely wouldn't have left when I left in 2011 had I known that. But I just was at the point where I was like, I really was feeling like I needed to be doing something closer to what felt more authentic to me personally. And that eventually became writing and stand-up comedy. And that's what I've been doing every single day since late 2014.
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, it's ballsy if you just don't mind me saying so. Why are you laughing?
Well, it is. I mean, romanticism is, it's like great. And the thing I'm optimizing for is the minimization of regret on my deathbed. And the regret that I wanted to avoid, and we all have different kinds of regrets based on where we come from, who we are, all that kind of stuff. What's the regret you want to avoid? And the regret I wanted to avoid was not having the answer to the question, what would happen if I gave it my all? And when you quit your job and you chase your comedy dream or your dream to be a chef or an artist of any kind, that's all you get is the answer to the question, what would happen if I gave it my all? If you make some money, if you become famous, if people think you're swell, your book sells 100,000 or 1 million copies, well, that's just gravy. But that's not something you can count on. All you can count on is understanding that you have committed to the path, and what happens on that path is outside of your control, and you need to be okay with it. And that's the romantic journey. And the romantic journey is me, after I hang up with you, going to an open mic in front of 4 or 5 people somewhere just to run lines, because I got to get ready for my headlining weekend in Sarasota next weekend. And it's not romantic. It's not sexy, but that's the gig. Mm. And that's what you're committing to. You're not committing to your Netflix special. That, maybe that happens. It probably doesn't, but maybe it happens. But you get to know, well, I gave it my all, and I don't have to sweat not knowing what would have happened.
I love it, and it's all the messaging that you're talking about is coming right from your book. But comedy is so hard. It is so hard because what's funny to you may not be funny to me, may not be funny to that audience, may not funny. There's certain things that are funny. Slapstick, you can always get somebody to laugh. You can go hard ethnic one way or another. You can David Chappelle something. You'll get people to laugh. Robin Williams had a great line about comedy. It was a great biography about him. After he passed away untimely, of course, he died from suicide related to depression. He said something really interesting about comedy. Tell the truth about life. People are not comfortable with the truth in life. Explain it to them and well deliver it. They'll start laughing. So I got a couple of topics I'm going to fire up here, and I want you to respond to them. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Money. Can it buy happiness?
If you want it to.
When you meet women, do you stand on your wallet, Paul?
The only women I meet are my wife and daughter. And so.
Did you stand on your wallet when you met your wife?
My wife could see in me an ambition. I didn't have a ton of money when I met her, but she could see in me an ambition that I didn't have to take what it was. But right, so I didn't have this. I didn't have the strength to be poor.
All right, you're a growth stock. Your wife saw a growth stock.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And your daughter is probably like my daughter. She sees you as an oil well. It can never be not. Tap,
but you know what?
Right? It's never dry.
As long as you feel appreciated for being that oil well, then good enough.
By the way, please trust me. She's your daughter. She's going to take it, and you're going to not care. It's just unconditional. All right, let's go to marriage. We need some humor there, don't we?
Marriage, I think the reason why people talk about marriage isn't because of the stereotypes about, my wife or I'm a moron. It's because in marriage, we get to see the truth of ourselves through somebody else's eyes. And it's horrifying. It's just like I can't remember it might be in the book or might not be, but the price of being loved is being known. And being known is horrifying, to actually look at somebody who knows you as well as you know yourself, and that she sees you with all your flaws and your snoring and your disgusting habits and your insecurities, and knowing that, where that comes from. And you have to sit there and allow her to love you despite your imperfections. God, that's horrifying to me. And that's why marriage is hilarious. Because the fact that my wife loads the dishwasher like a maniac, to me, is really just my insecurity about not being able to control a chaotic world, and it drives me bananas.
Okay. All right. Keep going here. Parenting And I'm going to say something else. Mother-in-laws. Mother-in-laws.
Parenting is petrifying because the thing you love the most in the world, the thing that makes you the most vulnerable in the world, might not love you back with the same intensity until you're decades gone from this planet. In fact, probably won't.
Right. They won't get it until they have their own kids. Even.
That's exactly right. That's
right.
exactly the reason my mom wanted me to get married was to understand how much I was loved, not just because I was leading a dirty single life.
Did it work? You were, by the way, you were living a dirty single life.
I was living a very dirty.
We know that about you from your book. Yeah. That's when you were not reasonably happy. You were very fucking happy when you were reading it.
It's fun. Now
you're reasonably happy.
It was fun. Yeah, it totally worked. That's the thing about having kids. When you have kids, you see how the world works, and you see, oh, I was loved and wanted. I mean, for not for everybody, of course, but like for the very fortunate of us, I was loved and wanted and cherished more than I ever had any idea. And that's what that's what parent does for you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go. No.
Yeah, well, that's and I think the mother-in-law thing.
Yeah, that's why I wanted you to go. Go to the mother-in-law.
I mean, like the mother-in-law.
Your mother likes your wife?
My mom, my late mother, God bless her, was very excited that I married who I married because she's a good person who has a wonderful personality and is in it for the right reasons. My mother-in-law, also my late mother-in-law, God rest her soul, was the glue to our family. She was, nobody loves your kids more than your mother-in-law. And there's a lot I have a whole bit about my father-in-law and about how he thinks I'm an effeminate waste of space, and he loves it because he's a cowboy and he's a real man, and I sing show tunes and wear Lululemon. We went to Wicked 10 years ago and I cried in front of him, and that set me back a decade of respect right there.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 55.
Are you man boob 55 or are you tight pack 55?
I got a little bit of man boobage, but I was just at the gym a couple hours ago, and
I'm bullshit on you. I had you very man boob 55.
You are? I don't think.
I think you're man booby. I think.
I'm not terrible. I'm not terrible. I got a little perkiness under the wrong sweater. The wrong sweater. It's not impressive.
I'm very impressed with my double D's at this point in my life. I was on a radio show and a guy said to me, you're railing on Trump, but you're like a D-list celebrity. You know what I said to the fucker? I said, hey, man, you got it wrong. I'm a double D-list celebrity. When I'm going in for breast reduction, I expect to be a B-lister when I come out. All right, you skipped the mother-in-law. I was impressed with that. It was a good move. Let's go to work.
Well, for most people don't get to work at the thing they really care about. They choose a career, or a career chooses them, and then they sort of get locked into a lifestyle, and it's hard to change once you once you get a ways down the path, and it's hard to see work as an opportunity. I tell you what happened to me when I quit my job at Facebook. I had a great 3 to 6 months, and then I realized one morning after dropping my kids off at school, when we lived in Atlanta still, I dropped them off at school, came home, and looked at my email, and it was like, there's no email. You have no messages. Nobody. I opened LinkedIn. It said nobody's looked at your profile for 90 days, and just for a second, I thought I was dead. And it's like, look, we resent the game. We hate the stress. We don't like our clients complaining and our colleagues bitching or asking for permission to do something they don't need. But what you realize when you stop working is that work provides you with a lot of stuff that we need as human beings. And that's belongingness and a place in the world.
No question.
And the self-esteem of solving client problems, of being a respected person who knows what he's talking about in an industry that's growing and exciting and interesting and changing all the time. And when you bail and you don't recommit yourself to something, you realize, oh my gosh, I was actually getting some amount of work besides a paycheck, but 90 90+% of us think about work pretty much only as a paycheck. And that's not giving work the credit it deserves.
Well said. All right, I'm down to the 5 words. We have 4 minutes. We're going to cover 5 words. They're culled from your book, 5 words. You give me a word back or a sentence. I'm going to say something. You think of what?
Okay.
So I say the word love. You think of what?
Family.
Okay. How about Facebook? I say the word Facebook.
Opportunity.
Okay. Marriage.
Important.
Comedy.
Bitch goddess.
Bitch goddess. Tell me, give me one more sentence.
So Emo Phillips calls comedy, he refers to it as the bitch goddess of comedy. It's the magical tincture that when it touches your lips is wonderful and transformative, and yet it's so elusive, and everybody wants a piece of it. And the supply of people who want a piece of it greatly exceeds the demand for our services. And so, except for a very few of us, it is a bitch goddess.
It's amazing. I see it as the antidote to life. We need it as a tonic for us.
It's magic. It really is magic.
Yeah. All right, last word. And you get the last word. I say the word life. You say what?
I already said opportunity, right?
You said that for Facebook.
Oh, man, I wish I would have kept it for life. I'm going to come back to love.
Love. All right. Well said. All right. The title of the book is Reasonably Happy. Paul has admitted, and hopefully his wife doesn't listen to our podcast, that he was very happy single, but he's reasonably happy now. God bless him. And the book is amazing. It's chock full of great stories and great philosophy. And it's funny, Paul. Okay. You have achieved the bitch goddess status in this book. And I'll just point out, I have the wonderful little stickers of your forehead there.
Oh, nice. Okay? Nice.
God bless you. Thank you for writing this book, and thank you for joining us on Open Book.
Anthony, thank you so much.